All right, we're live. Earlier on, I was training in here earlier on, and my son was in here, and he's 2. And the roadcaster light, there's like lights on the podcast thing, and it's like a rainbow light. So obviously, immediately a child's eyes are drawn to it. So he was messing around with it, and from about 5 minutes before we started, up until I went on, so he had it set to this.
So I was talking like this.
And honestly, the panic of like, how did he do that? I don't know how to do that. And I was like flicking through, being like, fuck, what did he do? And I was like, I can't start the show like this. I need to figure it out. But there's a second page of like, you know, things that you can add on or whatever, that he had somehow found his way to. Oh man, I was like, oh my God.
You should have just kept that voice going, man.
Yeah.
So welcome to the show.
Yeah, no, I don't think it would work. Thanks for coming on, man. It's great to see you. Congrats on the games. Like, I think my thumbnail choice of the best coach in CrossFit ? I think is, I don't know, I think it's pretty accurate. Like, it's remarkable. I think I want to talk about James. I want to talk about Dallin and the others as well, but James seems to have transformed over the last probably 18 months, but specific, like when I think back to him at semi-finals when he just scraped in, even when you think back to semi-finals when he just missed out, and then you think of semi-finals when he got in, and then you think of him this year, it's pretty crazy. It's a pretty crazy ride for him. What's the biggest change in him, do you think? Like, what's either physically or mentally, what do you think the biggest thing is?
Well, I think to answer that question, you have to look back at James when he was leaving the teenage division and trying to get into the professional side of things. You know, James comes with a host of very strong prerequisites, aerobic. And we all know when you get to the CrossFit Games, there's a lot more running, oftentimes swimming, sometimes, you know, we're going to see some sort of a more aerobic side of things that you just can't get in a qualifier like the Open or maybe even quarterfinals. And sometimes you only see it once at a semifinal. And so I already knew that if we can get the strength side figured out, allow time to develop James with the like the all around like CrossFit, like classic stuff, that'll come around. I knew that there's a couple catalyst points for him that it really started to transition. The first one was when he missed out by 1 point at the Syndicate Crown. That was a very challenging moment, but a very necessary moment. And it showed how close he was. And oftentimes we need to see stuff like that. And so from that year, I would say it was the focus needs to be on strength. And then, he makes it to the games last year. And it was this great moment, this finally just like a weight was lifted off his shoulder type of moment. And then when he got to the games, he was sick. So he really didn't get to showcase what he had like worked so hard for, over the last like 4 or 5 years. So this year was just another stage of growth for James. Every year I challenge him with my direction with programming, the trust that he needs to have in me. And every year he responds. And I think this is just like the workouts that came out, what we even saw, the demonstration of what he proved at semifinal against these very talented athletes, proved to him that, hey, what I'm doing is on the right path. So let's just continue to work this path.
Is he as confident as he like appears to be? As in, is any of it kind of fake it till you make it? Because like when you look at him, say in Texas, like he never looked weighed down by the red jersey, or he never looked like he was struggling to, like any of the workouts that you'd expect him to do really well in, he did really well in. And usually, especially someone that's kind of younger in the field, that tends to kind of buckle them a little bit, where like they're the ones that they struggle with, where, oh, I'm going to do really, everyone's expecting me to do really well in this. Oh shit, I messed it up or whatever. But he just doesn't seem fazed by any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I think what it is he has a very realistic expectation of himself on every single workout. Now, James and even Dallin for the same, argument here, they've been doing this since they're 14 years old in the highest form of competition. And so that mixed with how we program for him, it gives him a very clear understanding of reps, sets, finishing where he should be finishing rounds, where he should be finishing workouts. And so, with this very common understanding, and James has a very deep passion for the sport of CrossFit. So, he's been watching these guys compete for a long time. If James never stepped on that floor, I bet he can tell us very, very closely, like who's going to finish first, second, third, fourth, fifth in any given event. So, when no matter what happens, if I just execute, I'm going to get this spot. If my execution goes according to plan, it kind of alleviates some of that pressure of the unknown. So, when we're talking, and we'll use Chad, for example, he's telling me like, hey, like, I'm so confident in this that I know this is going to be a top 3. And it's such a long event that I'm just going to be within, let's call it like 4 or 5 reps within the leader. But I know when there's 20 minutes left, I got to start to make my move. So I'm watching this event and it's quite boring to me. I mean, not because it's step ups, but it's just like we're just watching these guys coast. And then when the certain time comes, I'm expecting it. He's expecting it, that he's going to start to make his move. And so when I'm seeing it happen, we've already spoke about it in the back. It's just like, this is exactly how is it supposed to go down. And it doesn't always go like that, to be 100% honest. There's, for example, the event number 1, he expected to win that event. He knew what he's capable of, but he didn't know what other people were capable of. So it was a very grossly underestimated event by him, but 7th place is a really good score on that one.
Yeah. When you're working in the back with him, so obviously last 2 years you had 5 athletes or whatever at the games, and then this year you had Dallin and James, and well, I guess with the 2 of them, you would expect, or onlookers from outside might have expected that they won't be in the same heat, or that Dallin might be vying for the podium and James might be like, I probably, to my own showing my own ignorance, probably would have picked him for like maybe pushing top 10, like 11, 12, 13, like trying to get into that top 10. Pretty early on, they were basically just set like in the same heat all the time. How do you manage that? Like, how do you kind of bounce between the 2 and not give one more attention than the other or whatever?
So this is something that we've been doing since they were 15 years old. Dallin was my first teen athlete. James came on board because Dallin is one of his best friends. And so it was in that moment, way back when, in 2018 or 19, where we started to develop just like how we do things. My philosophy is I need to create the best possible athlete. So that's my goal, is if I get the most out of James and I get the most out of Dallin as well, whatever happens on the floor is what happens. But I can guarantee to them that we did everything in our power to give them the best opportunity to perform at their absolute best. And so when we're in the back and we're talking back and forth, it's usually like, they have the same exact warm up. I'm usually talking to James beforehand and then talking to Dallin during the warm up. And then as Dallin is, I give him a little bit of space. I'll go head over to James and I'll talk to James and I'll see where he's at. And it's just like, it's very normal, I guess. What the best way to think about it is, it's very normal for us to just be like, hey, Dallin, I'm going to go speak with James real quick. And then I'm like, hey, James, like, you good? Let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to go speak with Dallin real quick. But I'll tell you right now, like, I don't believe the boys really need me in the back. Like, they are so in tune from what they need to be, like everything, like what they need to be eating before a very specific workout, protein, carbs, fat, it doesn't matter. when they need to be in the warm-up area, when they need to get their body work done, when they need to start their, we'll call it like a heat up, or they're just like getting on an echo bike, what an activation needs to look like, what interval work needs to look like, what time they need to be at corral, what their main focuses are. Like, they could do all that by themselves. I'm just there basically just guide them through that process. And so, if there's like, if they didn't have me there, I would argue that maybe they're getting within like 1 or 2 spots of where they finished. Like, I'll let you know, like, there was a time I remember the handstand push-up workout. James is about to come up, is doing his strict handstand push-up, and I'm in the coach's box. And this is a moment where I believe he needed me. I'm watching him struggle through doubles, right? He kicks off, he looks up at me, and he's kind of like looking like for an answer. And I'm like, go into singles. Like, you got to do it now. And he starts moving singles faster than he's moving doubles, right? So I believe that was a moment where like he looked, he needed an answer, gave it to him, boom, and he's off. And so there's a couple of moments throughout that, like even in the final event, the final 2 events, he came off and he's like, dude, my grip is just, it's shot. I can't do anything. And he's like, I think I have to do this blank, 3 reps on the bar muscle ups. And I go, yes, that's correct. Do that. Just trust that you can do that. Because we saw what happened. He manages a 5th place finish, I believe. Something that a lot of people didn't believe he had within him. I don't even think he believed he had that within himself either. But again, it just goes to show that all that training that we've been doing for many years, not just last year, but many years, is showing, the proof is showing.
A good question. Are you the same with all of them? Like, do you take a different approach with Fee than you do with Dallin and James? Like, are you as standoffish? Or like, because I've often heard that coaches have to be like chameleons and adapt certain personalities for certain people. Like, do you just have like one way of dealing with them, and then the ones that you work well with you because they respond well to that?
No, everyone's just a little bit different. It is very similar to James and Dallin, but it's also just a tad different. My main objective when I'm back there is to give them confidence. So it depends on what I'm receiving from them. That's kind of like giving me feedback I'm giving back to them, to make sure that the solution is confidence, right? And so it's just kind of, I guess, like colored a little bit different. But usually in competition, if you have a lack of confidence, like that's an example here, the clean ladder, the first clean ladder, whatever it was, 3, 3, 2, 1, I believe, we're back and forth. Should we do power cleans or should we do squat clean? And the question became, if I go power clean the whole way through, do I have to wait? Do I have to rest a little bit longer before I can pick the next bar up just to say that I'm going to power clean it? Or do I push the next one, squat clean it, and then the next one, squat clean it? And so if you're not confident with your decision, 1 second behind, and that's what happened to James, 1 second behind, he didn't make it to the next. Now, James says it in the Butteries documentary. He's like, look, if I would have made it through, I probably would have gotten 1 spot better. So it wasn't very detrimental. Yeah. But in other cases, it is like that. And so those are things where it's like, you got to have the confidence that this will give you your best finish. It may not be what you want. It may not be a top 20, but at least it's not going to be a 30.
What do you think about, so there's been a lot of content made, well, not as much as usual for obvious reasons, but there's been some content made about the games. And say like Hiller made a video saying that it's, like technically not the fittest on earth, and other people, there's already basically been like a little asterisk put, similar to like 2020, similar to 2019. How does that sit with you? Like, are you like, I'm kind of of the opinion that you can only beat what's put in front of you. So if the test or the people that are put in front of you, you beat them, then you win, and that's it. But I do see the argument of it wasn't the complete test, and some of the workouts that were left out would have changed things, and etc. Like, where do you sit with that?
Yeah, I understand the argument. I understand all the points. whatever the case may be, 2 less of this, these athletes are not there, these terrible circumstances happening. At the end of the day, it's not us that did that. That's CrossFit says if you win this, you're crowned the fittest. That's what he did. So no matter what, it's going to be the argument until the end of time. What I tell James is, hey, you accomplished something amazing. Well, I'm going to call it that. Yes, he is the fittest. He did the thing that other people in history had to do. We can discuss programming. We can discuss a lot of things. What I tell James is, you accomplished it. It was amazing. Enjoy this moment. Enjoy this moment. But I'll tell you now, Rogue is more important than what just happened 3 weeks ago. So it's like, it's another opportunity for James to prove to himself. There's always look, I'll say this until the end of time. If you don't have haters, you ain't doing anything special. If there's no one trying to chop you down, and I'm not saying people are trying to chop them down, it's just normal, easy combos. But if you don't have that in there, you're probably sitting in like top 20 or top 15, which are all very great placings to be. But you want to be having this talk about you. That means that you've done something crazy that people didn't believe that you could achieve. So he earned it. Like, he did everything that, all the guys that ran through those events did. And there was, there was 1 or 2 or 3 guys that weren't in there that could have changed a couple of things. There's 1 or 2 workouts that could have changed. But let's not forget the fact that he beat some very, very impressive, very fit dudes that had been doing this for many years, that had every opportunity to, to beat James. They had every opportunity to do it, and it didn't happen. So this is something that we're really, really proud about.
It's sort of like that thing of if I'd left my house 5 minutes earlier, this would have happened. And that's kind of like, but it didn't. Like, he didn't leave, so it's irrelevant, really. Like, it is an interesting one. It's crazy though. Like, Dallin told a great story. He was on last week, and he told a great story of the brief. I think it was a brief for the run for the Dickies triplet one, and like, they briefed it, whatever. And James just turned around and said, "Am I going to win the CrossFit Games?" And it's like, it's just crazy. Because I think everybody else is kind of watching and thinking the same thing of like, fuck, like, he could win the games here, which I think, I don't know, he himself plays Heat 1 and he didn't put himself in first. Like, when you're going into it, were all of your ambitions and his ambitions for the games, were they the classic, like, just execute and we'll see where it lands or whatever? Or did you have a placing in mind? Did he have a placing in mind? And at what point did it become like a tangible reality of like, fuck, if we don't mess this up, like, you could actually win the whole thing?
Yeah. So going into it, first and foremost, we want to make the cut, top 20. Next is, okay, if we achieve top 10, this will be a very good thing. And we just, obtainable goals. Even if the other 2 workouts were done, I don't think it would have been any worse than what we saw at for the handstand push-up workout, for example. But as this is something that everyone's going through. And to be 100% honest, on Sunday, when Fikowski had a good chunk of a lead, it was like, all right, let's see if we can do like James second, Dallin third. Like, how can we make this thing go? And then just as quickly as they released that workout, is just as quickly it's like, whoa, this is the cards have fallen in our favor. The odds are coming towards us a little bit more, because like I said, James, Dallin, they're very good at knowing their competitors and understanding where they stack up. So immediately it's like, okay, I'm getting points here, and so it was in that moment where I was like, all right, let's see how many points we can get on Fikowski. And then they released the last 2 workouts, and this is funny because this is kind of like for Dallin and James, when I'm talking to them, it's like, hey, hopefully we get 2 workouts. Hopefully we get 200 points, and let's see what happens. And then with like Fikowski and Vellner, on the flip side, they're like, please let it be 100. Do not let this be a 200-point event. So you're getting like 2 different like energies being sent out there. And, you know, we hear, I mean, I think there's probably a video out there of Pat, like, you know, just speaking out his displeasure, which I would be in the same boat if my boys were in and James was, you know, was sitting in their position. He'd be like, man, seriously, like 200 points? God, come on. But it wasn't like that. It's like we got 200 points. And it was in that moment where I was like, okay, I feel like we can probably do something here. I didn't know where Fikowski's strengths were in relation to thruster and chest to bar, thruster bar muscle up. And it wasn't honestly until they announced Fikowski took 3rd. In that moment, I was like, I remember just looking at Elle and be like, what just happened? Like, because I'm stuck underneath the arena. Like, you know, I'm not even allowed outside to even watch what the hell is going on. And I was like, it was in that moment I was shocked because I didn't know. I'm just like buried underneath in the warm-up area, just trying to figure out what the hell is going on.
Yeah, it's crazy. Vindicate says James needs to come to Crash and do a clean sweep the games, Rogue and Crash. And then Ortega says if James calls JR spelled correctly, that's rare that people spell JR's name correctly, and ask compete, will JR just add him? I'd wager he would. You know, make a little room. It's like make a hole, guys. Yeah, it's like it is crazy, and it's the kind of thing as well because of everything that happened, because of like Lazar, and because of how, I don't know, just bizarre the games were after that. Like for a litany of different reasons. I kind of talked to Dallin about this at the start because like that was my first show back, and I was kind of like, what the fuck do I do here? Like I can't not talk about it, but I also don't want to just talk about it. And there's enough people talking, and like not a lot of people saying a lot, but there was a lot being said. And it was just kind of hard, but like we kind of just prefaced the episode. I suppose I'm kind of doing the same with this one of just, it was really shit what happened, like absolutely awful and a horrible tragedy and nothing you'd ever wish on anyone or any event or anything. But like the fact of the matter is now we don't really know any of the facts. Like they just, we've got about 20% of the information, so we just kind of have to wait and see, I suppose. But like everything that we're saying here, I don't want people to think like, oh, they're not even talking about it, they don't care. Like it's just the fact that everything is kind of laced with it, like, or there's a, you know, a cloud around it or whatever. After that first event, so like say Thursday, there was like the athlete meetings. Fuck, I'm not gonna remember the guy's name now. Marcus. Fuck, I can't remember. He's a team athlete, and he put up a video basically detailing what happened. So he kind of explained, we were called into a meeting, we drove into the meeting, we had the meeting, this happened. He details it all. It's on his YouTube. We put it on his stories yesterday. I think it's actually really good, just factual. Like, though, what was it like from your perspective, the room, like there you go, Marco Coppola, he sounds like a Godfather character. What was the room like, as in what was the, it must have just been fucking horrible because you're making like an awful decision and then everybody's sad and upset, and then everybody's also like kind of disagreeing with each other. Are you the type of person that just kind of sits back and lets everyone say their piece and then gives an opinion at the end sort of thing? Or are you like jumping in? You don't strike me as a jumping in type.
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
I listen a lot. I've just come to learn that it's best to listen to all sides first, and then if I feel some pressing question or some comments, I'll dish them out. You know, back there it was a lot of like like jumping back and forth naturally through like mixed emotion of like emotion and logic, like, you know, which one are you going to let, like, how are you going to decide? And it was basically split into 2 parties. The coaches, like, I came to the conclusion that the coaches shouldn't have a say at all. The only room that we have to speak upon is if one of our athletes doesn't feel like they have the power to speak, right? And so, there was a lot of great combos back there. There's a lot of great points back there. But then there was a lot of combos that were not being had. And some athletes that were given the voice to speak on behalf of other athletes, they were approached by a handful of rookies, people that depend on this weekend, for a lot of their livelihood as well, because they've already paid a lot of money. And so there's a lot of great questions being tossed out there. But I came to the conclusion, that I don't believe that coaches needed to have any say back there. We're not the ones that are being challenged to go out there. We're not the ones that are that we have to have this, do I need to go out there and perform? Do I need, we don't. But what we can do is listen and speak on the behalf of people if they feel like they need to be. We could do that. So when I was back there, and I went back there for the whole thing, the main convo, and then when all the athletes split, I went up to the next room with the athletes that were remaining during the decision-making process. And I was just in there listening. And it was as difficult as you might think it is. And it was nowhere near as simple as others might think it was.
Yeah.
Because I get it. There's a lot of people put in very, very tough decisions, and there's going to be scrutiny no matter what. So you're kind of you're damned if you do and damned if you don't type of talk. So what's going to be the right choice for you? And what happened. So that's kind of without digging too much into it. That's kind of where I stood with the whole thing.
It tends to be those, I've often been involved in arguments where I have a really strong opinion on something and I'm talking and just basically not listening to what the other person's saying. Just no, but you need to hear, my side of it is more logical, more clever than your side. So just shush and listen. And I've also been on the other side of that where I know I'm wrong and I know the other person is right, and I still have to kind of sit there and take my medicine or whatever. And then there's been a few occasions where I can control myself and just listen, or just be in a room where people are talking. And the stuff that you kind of notice or hear when you do that, and then afterwards you're like, dude, did you hear what such and such person said? There must have been a shit ton of that, especially because I know a lot of people don't share that opinion that the coaches shouldn't have an opinion, that it should be just the athletes and we just respond to what they do and we wait, it's our job, we just wait to do what we're told. So did anything surprise you? Was there anything in particular that was fuck, okay, didn't expect that? Or has there been any, I don't know, changing of how you view people or how others that you were with viewed people?
Mm-hmm. One thing that I noticed back there was there was, in all good reason, there was a lot of emotion. It was driving a lot of the conversation and a lot of the changes. And what I gathered was the voices of the minority wanted to change for the majority. But the majority voices were not being heard, right? And so what I gathered during this time was, let's just see what this, whatever it was, the type form that was sent out to people, and just see what the majority of the voices think. And during that time, I was actually more surprised by the way Mayhem handled it, and almost and there was this one other guy, Royce Dunn. I feel like he was the voice of reason back there. When I heard him talk, I was hey, he's got some good points. Let's listen to what he's saying. And then people from Mayhem would speak up. I'm like, oh, I didn't really think about it. Okay, that's a good point as well. And then I would hear someone else speak, and I'm like, I see where you're coming from, but man, I don't know if that is going to be the right thing.
Let's go back to this Royce guy.
Yeah, and I'm just like man, like he's making some really good points over here. And so, like to answer your question, I think Mayhem surprised me the most. And it's like you kind of get an understanding of that if you watch the Buttery Bros documentary with Luke Parker. I did not expect stuff like that. It was like, and I really do understand where he's coming from, growing up in a family that was has very strong Christian beliefs. Like I get it. Like I remember even hearing my mother speak about, it's okay because I'm at a better place, and I'm like, but what about me? I wouldn't be okay with that. Like, why are you okay with going to another place that you're no longer on this earth? And so I like to see that is the take on it and how close they were to him. I was just like, wow. Like, and it further cemented that I don't have a say in any of this. And it further cemented that the only coaches that should have a say are like Facundo, because he worked directly with him. And I think there was like one other coach. It may have been his brother's coach, Luca's coach, that also worked directly with him. I'm like, these two guys over here, let them talk. Everyone else, like, maybe not our position. So that's like, yeah, it's very eye-opening. And again, like, I take a fly on the wall approach. I like to talk with my people and hear if I'm like ass backwards, or if maybe we're on the same page, or it's like, like I still remember L was kind of like, well, consider this. And I'm like, oh shit. Okay. I don't plan on saying a word after that, because I could have got ahead of myself before all the information was released to us all. So
Yeah. I guess like there's some people like Royce has been around years. And yeah, him and Mayhem, yeah, they're just sensible, I think. But it is hard. And then I guess people are interested in self-preservation as well. And even if they're not aware that that's why they're saying what they're saying or doing what they're doing on both sides, it just becomes like, I don't know, you forget the reason why you want something to happen, but you just remember that you do want it to happen. And then it doesn't matter. The why doesn't matter anymore. It's like, well, we should definitely continue, or we should definitely stop. And like the why is kind of gone out the window.
yeah.
Kevin had a great point here. Forget about coaching James and Dallin. Getting a house plant that size is way more impressive. Yeah, it's like a fucking banana tree. Yeah, it's absolutely massive. With the guys then, so Elle was working with Danielle, and then you were working with James, and you were with Dallin. Is there crossover there at all? Like, do you go help her and he comes help the guys, or do you just kind of stay? Because obviously the times are different and stuff.
There's Elle and I will chat about Danielle. I think what's best for Danielle is the consistency of Elle. Whereas like I might not have the time to get back there because I'm with the boys like post or pre. And so what she can expect is that Elle will always be with her. So Elle and I will have dialogue between each other, suggestions, recommendations for both Danielle and for the boys. And then usually Danielle would just approach me with any sort of like question that she might have. Like I think it was the last workout where like with the body workers in the back, and she was like, hey, like, do you think I'm considering doing this? What are your thoughts on doing that? It was funny because I was like, we just heard the workout. Like I couldn't even remember it. And this is just like, I need to see the things on a board in order to like, for it to cement itself. And I'm like, I don't even know the rep scheme. And she's like, what do you mean? You're standing right there listening, like with all of us. I'm like, I know, but I don't want to tell you anything that I'm not positive or 100% certain of. And she's like, oh, you're no help. And then she just like walked away. But that's kind of like, that's how we, I'm of help to her in the back, is if she has a question, she'll approach me with it, which is usually like the best way. And then, I take more of like a supporting role where, if I can see that, she is stressed out, I'll approach her. If there's if she's just warming up and I'm just next to Elle and they're just bantering back and forth, I'll just kind of like cue in with Elle or her. I'll be like, hey, consider this, like think about this, and that's kind of like the, I would say with any of our athletes, like let's say like if Kelsey was back there as well, it would be the same scenario, like at semifinals at the West. It's just like, I ask questions to bring up, like to hear. I don't find myself very often telling people what to do.
Yeah.
More so than I ask the questions to allow them to figure out the answers themselves and then decide which is going to be better.
You say there about the consistency with Danielle thrives with that with Elle. What was it like at semifinals, or what could it potentially have been like had Kelsey qualified for the games too? Would that have changed how you guys manage things there, or what would you do there?
Yeah, I think so. We just would have brought another coach with us. And that was a question that, that I brought up to Elle a couple of times. I was like, hey, have this conversation with Danielle and Kelsey, both of them, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. Like, what do these athletes need? If this scenario plays out, what do we need? Is there something where I can step in? Is there something where you just bring another coach that can step in? Like, how is this going to go down? I just think that having that plan ahead of time solves a lot. And that, it's something that I practiced with going into semifinals and into the games last year, where I was like, way before, I'm like, all right, guys, this coach is with this person, this coach is with that person. We're going to work this in the back this type of way. Everyone's going to be accounted for. We're going to practice that here, like in Naples as well. And we had a pretty good flow going for the most part. Not perfect, but a pretty good flow.
Is Danielle a brute athlete then, or is she kind of her own, like coached by Elle, but technically not in the stable, or would you include her in the stable? Is it that simple?
It's not that simple. I think I think the Danielle Brandon brand is very large. Now we support her in any way that we can. And we do that for any of our athletes. So if our athletes tell us like, hey, this is how I want to be supported, that's what we do. And so the best support for her is, having Elle on her side. And if she needs anything from us, then we're there for her if she needs it,
The coaches, so like I've DM'd Elle a couple of times. I haven't actually spoken to him, but I saw him in the warm-up area and I saw you in the warm-up area, and you have remarkably similar demeanors. I would say Elle is like substantially more imposing just because of his stature. He's just like fucking huge.
Large guy.
But you are both like, do you think, is that why he's working with Brute and why you wanted him to work with Brute? Because you have similar kind of energies or similar kind of, just like that fly on the wall thing. Like you're both, anytime I was down there, you were both just kind of standing, watching, observing, quick little chat, standing, watching, observing. You see some other coaches are in like their athletes' faces constantly, like you need to do this and we should do this. We need to think about this. Whereas you guys are very, very much like standoff.
Yeah. It's, it's a lot back there. It's a big, huge emotional roller coaster. And when you'll see us, like we'll get hype with them. When they do, when we see them hype, we're getting hype with them. But yeah, to answer that question, we try to be as stable as possible. We're not gonna, if something bad happens, it's like, okay, go through it. But once we leave this area, where it's done, and we're gonna be as stable as possible. Now, I don't think that's something that I couldn't have known prior to hiring Elle. The reason why we Elle on board 4 years ago is the dude is very, very smart. He's like, he could express the methodology of what we do to the tiniest, like minute little detail. Where I'm at this point now where with my athletes, Dallin, because I see him every day, it might change on a day-to-day basis where his athletes are all remote, where he can't change things on the fly. And so the way I'm coaching and the way he's coaching are two different styles, but come from the same tree, I guess you would say. But he's on board because like we knew that he was a very smart and bright individual, and he could do amazing things with this company, and he's proven that. And so it's just by chance that he's also a very stable guy as well, and I think it's good, like logically thinking versus emotionally thinking is a very it's something that you have to practice a lot, because I mean, it's hard as a competitor to not be driven off emotion, because a lot of things that these athletes are doing are driven off of emotion throughout the entirety of the event and the competition. And so to be that rock for them is something that's important. And having an L that has that, it makes it very, very good for us.
I meant to say this at the start of the show and I forgot. Oh, I'm a fucking idiot. If anyone, so I've got 2 tickets to give away to SoCal, to Tier Wadapalooza SoCal, the Tier Wadapalooza SoCal. So if anybody wants 2 spectator tickets for California, September 19th, I think. It's 3 days. So you've got some of the workouts have been announced. There's a 1 rep max snatch and 1 rep max clean and jerk. And then there's another one with like wall walks, a Wadapalooza style, like wall walks and thrusters, I think it is. Dallin is doing it, which is great. Mm-hmm. He got picked by his dad. Pat picked him as North American captain. Initially, when I heard about this initially, I thought, I kind of thought like Fittest was what popped into my head. I was like, oh, cool, an exhibition. But then like I've spoken to Dallin about it, Brent, Pat, Ricky, when he was supposed to be doing it. And like, there's no, it's like, it doesn't seem to be an exhibition at all. Like the guys are like, oh, fuck that. Like they're like, I want to win. I want to humiliate like the other team. And they've already started with the shit talk, which is amazing. Yeah. So if anybody wants a ticket, 2 tickets, 2 spectator tickets, the fairest way to do it is probably if you comment on the video. So not in the live chat, but if you comment on the video, and then what day is today? Tuesday. On Thursday, I'm doing a show with Emily Roth on Thursday. And on Thursday, I'll pick, she's actually doing it too. I'll pick the winner of the 2 tickets from the comments, not in the live chat. Ortega, you fucking idiot. Not in the live chat. I'll comment on the actual video, which I think you can't do until the video is over. But comment on it, and you can win 2 tickets to the Tier SoCal Wadapalooza. There you go. That kind of stuff. Then the off-season stuff. So you've got actually there's one other comment just to round off the L chat. Where the fuck is it gone? I think it was Augustus that said it. Might have been Corey. Oh yeah, there. Not only that, but L has a really great smile and he's 87 feet tall. Yeah, he's not far off us. He's incredibly tall. I remember he was standing and Danielle was kind of behind the bleachers of the announcement area or whatever in the warm-up area, and I came around the corner and I saw her, and then Elle was like against the bleacher and just looked enormous, and I just was like, that's obviously the Elle guy. I was like, that guy's fucking huge. Yes. Yeah, there you go. That's Augustus. There's no such thing as exhibition in high-level athletes. Yeah, you are correct. All right, so I want to talk about Dallin. So you put up a post after the games where you were kind of saying how proud you were of Dallin and James. And usually when I see something like that, I think like, oh God, here we go. This is contrived now. This is going to be like whatever. But the 2 of those guys are incredible. Like the fact that they are as young as they are. And I remember I interviewed Dallin like 2020 or 2021. And he was fine. Like he was what you'd expect a teenager to be who had basically never done a podcast before. He was like, as you would expect him to be. So I have a lot of empathy for him in that situation. I tried my best and he tried his best and it was great. But he, since then, like his kind of mental, or I don't know how to describe it, like his personality and stuff, and his mental fortitude and his ability to express himself is same with James, basically only matched by their physical transformations over the last, I say, 3 or so years, where it would be very easy to move out of the teenage division and to, I guess, just give up or be like, fuck, this is too hard. Or like, geez, these guys have so much ground made up already. Like, how will I ever catch up? It'd be very easy to fall into that mindset. And even you look at like Dallon's running, and that you talked about that last year. He talked about it last year. He's talked about it on his like Instagram that he's just running a lot. I remember talking to you about it at Wadapalooza, and Dallon kind of mentioned it the other day as well, where there was talk of like getting another coach in, and you said no, like let me try and then we'll see what happens, and I'm going to educate myself, see what happens. And then it paid off. Obviously he did well. The trust that those two guys have in you is arguably unmatched in the sport, where I don't know if there's a lot of people who could say to their coach, would have the confidence to say to their coach, hey, we need to get a different coach to coach this specific modality or whatever. And then for the coach to have the trust to say, let me just try something that I haven't done before and see if it works. It's only your career. Let's just see if it works. And then again, the trust back for the athlete to go, yeah, okay, fine. And like to give it their all and it works. Is that innate? Is that over time? Is that like, is it because you've worked with them so long that they just buy like whatever you're selling, they're buying? Like, do you have to kind of cultivate that all the time, or is it just there and it can't waver?
I think it's over time, a mixture over time. The thing with my athletes is they know that if I don't have the answer, I won't just shoot smoke up their ass. I'll actually tell them, I don't know, but let me just try and figure this thing out. And I think a great example is this, like back in Dallon's rookie year, they did that sandbag clean. And I remember seeing it in the athlete briefing, and I looked at him, I'm like, oh man, I don't know how to do this. I'm like, but I have this YouTube video and it could help us, you know? And I was like, look, this is how we're going to do this. And it didn't go well at all. It was really shitty. But we learned in that moment, you know, like probably once a week for the remaining portion of the last year, we had our hands on a sandbag. And we learned a lot about that sandbag. And there was one point in time, I forget the guy's name. He's a tier athlete. He's a strongman guy, Canadian.
Oh, Hooper.
Hooper came down
today.
Yeah, Hooper came down, and I was like, hey, can you just show us like your way of doing this? And again, it was just like more opportunities.
And he picked the sandbag up like this.
Yeah, 100%. I think we saw him like strict press 315 that day too with axle bar. But the thing that separates Dallon from a lot of other people is when we talked about running this past year, he fell in love with everything about running. Like his YouTube feed, his Instagram feed, the posts that he's sending me, like the DMs, everything is about running. He's falling in love with the process of becoming better. You don't have to force Dallon to get better at like to want to go do it. He's doing it on his own. And so when we have, you know, Mondays are fast days, Thursdays are long days, and Saturdays hill sprint, he's like, can't wait. Like, I've been watching these guys do it, and if these professionals are doing it, I'm doing it. He's like, this is my marathon pace, this is my easy pace, this is my threshold pace. Like, he could tell you everything without even like blinking an eye. Not only his pace, but other like professional athletes' paces. And it's like, you know, I'm watching 10K races in the Olympics. I'm like, I've never expected myself to sit and watch this. But he's been following these dudes for like a year now, and he's fallen in love with the process. And so that's one thing about Dallon is as long as I have the ability to explain the why behind it, I think that he could trust me a little bit more. And that's something that we do once a month is when it's time for the next cycle, we have this whiteboard in our gym. He'll write down everything like, strength, this, boom, gymnastics, this, aerobic, this, these combinations together, these movements together. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, all right, this can go on Monday, this can go on Tuesday, boom, the whole week. And it's like, what do you think about doing it like this? Like, what's your limiter here? He's like, this might stop me a little bit. I'm like, okay, perfect, erase. And it's like, okay, by the time we're done with that hour-long conversation, we have about 75 to 80% of the cycle done, the first week of the cycle. And I'm just like, all right, let me just handle the rest of this. I got to think this through, and then we'll move through. That's what we do every single month for an entire year. And then while we're in the process of training, he's given me the ability to say, stop him and go, no, let's switch this rep around. Let's move this movement here. Let's add a little more weight here. I think these lunges are taking too long. Let's take this down, because I want a certain adaptation. Yeah. Exactly. And so that's like, it's through that daily process that he's developed the confidence that I'm out there looking for his best. And then at the end of the, a month or 2 months or 3 months, however long we're working on it, when we test and he sees it, he's like, holy hell. So, back in 2023 games, we tested the 5K. I think he had like a 21:15 or 21:20, right? Comes out to the games, did not too well on that. But when we got out of the games and it was all about running, I was like, I guarantee you, I was feeling pretty good about it. I was like, I guarantee you're going to get a sub 19 by like December. And I was like, that's a lot. So it's a big change. Fast forward February here in Jacksonville, we're on a track. He's really nervous because it's testing day. And I could tell like Dallin gets nervous because he's asking me a million questions. And it's not like Dallin to be doing that. He's like, he wants to get all these things answered before he goes out and gives it his best. And we're on this like janky track. Like there's geese poop like everywhere on the track. It's in this part of town that's not too nice. Like you could hear like music being played from people's porches. And it's just like, there's holes in the track, like places where like the track is kind of ripped off. It reminds me actually like when Roman was talking shit about Brute, and I was like, this is probably what he was thinking of. It was like this piece of shit track they were about to like try to PR a 5K on. And he goes out there and runs a 19:11, and he finishes and he's like, I think I could have ran like a second or two faster. Like he just simply didn't know what he had in him. And it was like, in that moment, he was like, dude, it's working. Like, am I fast? Like, am I fast now? Am I a runner now? It's just like, you build on that and you build on that and you build on that. And it's like, now we're here. And it's like, okay, now our goal is sub 18. Our goal is going to be 17, sub 17:30 one day. And it's like, I think with a sub 18, that might give us like this faster of a 1 mile time. This might get us like a top, like 8 score, that's all we need, because we know that for the most part, he's pretty well developed until we find something else out and everything else. So that's kind of like a long drawn out winded process.
No, I love it, man. I love it. I love it. What's the pro? So say like last year, I think we caught up at the Goa thing in Big Dane in Madison. And I remember you were kind of building out the new Brute gym, and there was like James was there, Dallin was there, Fee was there, Danielle was there. I don't think Emma was there. I think she had gone. But they were kind of there, and that was the core. And then after the games, then people talk, like there's a lot of talk.
For sure.
Which I'm sure you're well used to. But say from my perspective of watching it, because I'm impatient and curious and judgmental and everything else, I was watching it and I was like, oh, they're fucked. Like, what's going on? Like, James is gone. Dallin is gone. Danielle is gone. Like, Danielle is standing with Elle at Rogue. Dallin's nowhere to be seen in Florida. Like, is Fee even there? Like, what's going on? And then after that, then you have, James is saying, well, no, I'm like, Matt's my coach. I'm just like, I'm spending time with family. I'm happier here, blah, blah, blah. And then at the same time, he was seen with Cole Sager, and it was like, oh, fuck, is he joining ComTrain? Like, what's going on here? When that kind of stuff is happening and that kind of talk, I guess it was people love to tear people down. And I guess Brute was kind of heading for this like precipice of like, holy fuck, like we're really doing the thing and we're like really showing that we belong to be where we are. And then it was like I said, people were like, oh, what's going on there? What's the story with that? When that kind of chatter is happening, is it hard for you not to just be like, oh, I'm going to do a fucking press conference and just like tell everyone to shut the fuck up and explain everything? And then I guess as well, a second question to that is it difficult when things are going so well and then there's kind of, from the outside at least, what appears to be a wobble, and it's like, oh shit, like we were right on the cusp of doing something and now do we do it? Like what do we do now? Like how did you handle those, I guess, 3 or 4 months of kind of transformation?
It was difficult. Not the chatter. I don't like the chatter. Really, truly doesn't bother me. Like people are gonna have opinions, and it's fine. Like as long as like my people aren't affected by it, it won't affect me. I guess because I'm coming from like the center of truth. You know, like I know really what's happening and what's going on, and people that are required to talk, you know, media, they have to they have to report, you know, like, well, who am I to say to like don't do what you're doing simply by seeing and hearing? Like I can't do that. And so as long as my athletes are like able to like communicate any frustrations with me first, that's great. It doesn't happen like that often, but if it's possible, it's possible. So, you know, whatever, like for example, here, great example right now, what people are saying about James's accomplishment. Like people are asking me like, oh, what are your thoughts on this? I'm like, I have seen like 1 or 2, but I'm not really like, I'm not in the comment section glancing what's going on. You know, I know James, I know he's not worried about what's going on either, because he understands like where his like true North Star is, right? And so now with all that going on, I was stressing out because I was like, man, I just poured like so much into this season, and it kind of didn't finish the way it's not going the way I really was hoping that it would. But there's a couple key lessons that I've learned here. One, I can't coach 5 athletes at one time, high level athletes, and give them the time that they need at the highest level of competition at the CrossFit Games. I'm not able to do that, and they deserve it. And so, you know, when Coach Dom left and then Emma left, I was like, I was telling this to someone recently too. I'm like, do you remember last year how mad I was? Like, I was mad that it didn't work out the way I wanted. I wasn't mad that they left. I was mad that I feel like I failed in some form or fashion. But then I took that like mad and I used it as motivation, because I was like, you know what? I'm going to prove to everybody why what I'm about to do is going to work. And I'm about to pour in so much time and effort into these athletes that like, I know what they're capable of. Watch, like just watch. And so I remember having a conversation with T, and I was like it was like competitive me. And I was just like, we're about to smash everybody. And it like, you're coming with me. And she's like, that's not really what motivates me. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Okay.
I got to call Dallin real quick.
yeah. I'm like, I hope you smash everyone. And then I'm like, but that's just me. But like, just let me be me, because I need motivation right now. And I'm like, Dallin, I'm just like, we're doing everything we can. Like, this is going to be it. And so like, what's funny is I use this as motivation behind the scenes. I didn't coach any differently. I wasn't like pressuring them with things that they couldn't handle, but I was like, I'm like ordering these running books, like reading everything over twice, highlighting everything over, like having conversations with coaches that I've never would even consider to have conversations with, like talking to Olympic coaches, Olympic lifting coaches, talking to running coaches. I'm just like, we got to figure this thing out, and we got to figure it out now. Like, what type of systems do we need in place? What type of, do we need to test their VO2 max? Like, where do we need to be? Where do they need to be? Like everything. And it was as if I couldn't sleep, because I'm like, I need to feel at the end of the day like I did enough to feel like I can get quality sleep, or I'm just like notes in hand, and I'm just like, right. And I like, if you were to see, like, I have notes in my phone, I have notes in a notebook, and I have notes on my computer. It just comes in, and it's like whiteboards, like it's just everywhere. And it's just like, a lot of it doesn't make any sense most of the time. But I grab, like, whenever Dallin's telling me things like, I'm watching him do something, I'm like, oh, that's not it. And I'll just like kind of type things out. And I'm like, oh, maybe we'll use this in the future. So then when we're talking about it in conversation about the next cycle, we're using it. So, you know, all of that stuff that happened at the end of the year, like, for example, like when Danielle was looking for another coach, like, I feel like I failed her. So in that process, I'm like processing like failure and being mad at myself at the same time, where I'm like, where could I have like done things a little bit different? But I'm like, you know what can I do for her? And I have to keep myself in that brain as far as like, what can I do for Dallin? What can I do for Fee? What can I do for James? What can I do for Danielle? Instead of like, I need to be doing these things. And it's like, that gives me the answer of what I need to be doing in order to give them the best. And I felt like Danielle switching over to L was the best thing for her. It's like, that was, you know, it made things a lot easier. And so when it was all said and done, it was kind of like, hey, these are my troops. These are the ones that are with me. And I'm confident in their ability to continue to progress. And, you know, it wasn't the best, like Vedison, it wasn't the best year for the whole, you know, Rebecca, the unfortunate thing that happened to her out in Europe, Fee not making it to the games. Like, you know, I still feel like I was a major portion of like not doing the right thing enough. But I'm saying that because it motivates me. I'm not saying like it's my fault. I'm just saying like, I need that. I need to feel that so I can just continue to like drive myself. And so, you know, like when it was all said and done, we finish up and it's like, hey, you know, it wasn't that bad. You know, and I wouldn't take away that pressure on myself either, honestly. I would still keep it going.
I'm trying to think. I'm really annoyed at myself. I can't remember the character's name, but you know, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where he has the red string on the whiteboard, and like the whiteboard is just covered in paper. I'm imagining like someone walking into your house and just be like, dude, Matt, it's okay. It's just a sport. Are things like how, so you have James is like was essentially remote, I guess, like for most of the year this year, and then Dallin was in person and Fee was in person, right? Like for most of the year this year. Apart from like the off-season bit, I guess, for Dallin. How finely balanced are things? Like, is it, do you think now that like, okay, these guys here, Rebecca in Europe, like that's pretty like even keel, that's pretty level. If I add another person in here, either remotely or in person, that could fuck stuff up. So maybe I should just stick with these. Like, what do you do if someone comes along and says, hey, I really like what you did with Dallin and James, and I'm a top 8 athlete? Like, you know, have you got room? Or are you like, no way? Like things like I tried that 2 years ago. It's too many. Like I'm good with where I am.
Yeah. I wouldn't take on any male or female athlete currently. That would have to be in person. I wouldn't take on another male athlete currently that would compete against Dallin and James. You know, in let's say like a final heat type style.
Is that an unspoken rule, or has that been like decided?
That's something that I've spoken with Dallin about, and it's just like I think Dallin and James have the conversation. You know, just if James was here in town, it would be a conversation that me, Dallin, and James would have. The only reason why Dallin and James works is because we've been doing it for so long.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue that if it was just James and Dallin was like, hey, can you coach me? I'd be like, dude, I can't, you know, or flip-flopped, you know. But we've just been doing it for so long. And with James moving over to Washington for his reasons that were going to be to, you know, to create a more positive outcome, I would argue that it did, you know. And so
it's not much of an argument.
Really good. You know what I mean? Like, it's a really good thing. And now I was stressing out about it for a lot of the year, where I'm like, man, I see what's going on with Dallin. Like, I just really hope that the things that, is going with James is going in the same way that I don't know. But, we make the most of it. I think I was having this conversation today. I'm like, man, would I take on another like female athlete? I would love to have another female athlete come down to Jacksonville and move down, and even like another male athlete, just not be mainly coached by me. In a perfect scenario, we have another male, another female athlete. We actually have a couple athletes that I would say like one athlete, one male that I think that is going to be a very good athlete in the sport, a young athlete. And I'm excited to see what comes about. And if he can move down here, it'll be amazing. I think Dallin would be a great person to look up to. We're looking for another female athlete that's like within that range of like 18 to like, I'd say like 20. That would be like the next crop, I would say. Like, that's what we're looking for. And, for the success of business and for the success of that athlete, like, if there's any two athletes that, would be good guides, Dallin, Fee, James when he comes down, Danielle when she comes down, like, these are all really great guides for these athletes. And that's kind of like, just like we're having to think ahead of who's to be the next Dallin, who's to be the next James. And it sounds crazy because it's been such a long process, and it's just like, this is only the beginning for them. But again, like it's Dallin that is on board with it. It's like, I get his like thumbs up. He's like, oh yeah, like, dude, it'd be really cool to get a teenager in here. I think it'd be great to develop them to see and understand like how these things work. That's where we're at right now.
So the two guys are doing Rogue, right? Are they both getting invites? Yeah.
Yep.
What are they? Is it for Dallin? Is it just to continue the way he's been progressing? And then for James, is there any kind of like, do you ever like, give like little motivation? Like, he's getting married like next week or something, right? Or this week?
This weekend.
Yes, that's terrible timing for Rogue. He didn't plan that right at all. Do you like say to him like, hey, people are saying that there's an asterisk beside your games win. This would be a really great way to shut them up. Like, do you ever do any of that kind of stuff? Or
when I was in person with them, and they're going they're just like deep into the pain, I'll come up and say a couple words like that where I'm like, like, it's obvious for James, like, that's just like, if I wanted to stoke the fire with James to, get him to push, that would be just an obvious one. It's like, all these people are talking shit.
Yeah.
I don't think you have what it takes, but prove me wrong.
Or like,
so
I've never read the Bible or something.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't like. Oh man, James just jokes around so much that it's a fine line between serious and like joking, or like, if I wanted to ease the mood with James, I would actually use that. Where I'm like, like, just something to like bring him back down to earth. Like, don't take it. So
what's your favorite book of fiction, James? Mine is the Bible. Let's just see what he says back.
100%, man.
He's like a fucking Labrador, though. It's crazy. Like, even I kind of said it at the start, but like, his energy that he has, I don't know how he maintains it. Like, I kind of watched him we weren't kind of allowed down there on Friday, but on Friday night, like at the track, and then Saturday, he was the same there as he was at, say, Wadapalooza, which obviously comes with a lot less pressure. Like, Wadapalooza is a bit more like, woohoo, like, cool off-season competition. It's great. Like, it's fantastic. There's a lot of money on the line, but it's not as intense as like the games, especially that games. But he was still like doing whatever is like, I vividly remember in Miami talking to him when he was warming up at the rig and he had a band like around his knees and he was doing stuff at the rig. And then I had almost a mirror of that in Texas where he was warming up and he had the exact same energy of just like, hey, what's up? And like chatting and like high energy chatting. but you could tell he was focused on what he was doing, but he still had the ability to be like, you know, hey, how are you? And blah, blah, blah. Which is remarkable, really, because again, you would expect like someone of his age and stuff who's putting on the leader jersey. I would have said the red jersey in the past. It should be red. It's kind of dumb that it's not red. But if someone putting on the leader jersey, it kind of weighs a bit heavier, and you'd expect him to be a bit more like, I don't know, even maybe like, oh, people expect me to be serious now, so I should be serious now, or like people expect me to be intense, so I should be intense. I think it's remarkable that he's kept as himself, I guess, like going through the year, because like especially the last couple of weeks just been so fucked. But yeah, it's I'm looking forward to seeing you. Will you be at SoCal as well?
Yeah, I'll be out there as well.
Yeah, and then Rogue, that'd be good. Well, listen, congrats on, I think, being the best coach in CrossFit. I think I'll change it from a question mark to an exclamation mark. Oh no, wait, I'll say you're the worst, and then that will inspire you for next year to work even harder. But no, seriously, congrats. I think like the kind of storms that you've weathered are remarkable. The crop of athletes that you had, the crop of athletes that you've kept from that crop, the success that you've had. Like I don't think it's a coincidence from talking to Dallin and talking to James. I don't think it's a coincidence that they're both working with someone who likes to listen and observe before reacting, that they've become like Dallin's basically fucking 12 and he's already a leader in the sport. Like it's crazy. James is the same. Like their confidence on the mic, their confidence on camera, all that stuff, like it's being built from their environment of the people who work with. So congrats. I think you've had a very large part to play in that. Good luck with the off season too. Anybody that wants to win 2 spectator tickets to SoCal, just comment on the video after it's over. You just comment whatever you want, and I'll just pick on Thursday. Thank you, Matt. Always a pleasure. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Pete. I appreciate it too, man.
Good stuff.